Hello friends, this is Darkscream, and welcome back to Dragonflight Crafting for Dummies. The goal of this video series is to explain the complexities of the new crafting system in bite-sized pieces to help you be a better crafter and a better customer. By understanding the system better, we will all save time, and as you may know,
time is money, friend!
This is episode 2 of the series, where we're going to cover the new crafting stats, which are Skill, Inspiration, Multicraft, Resourcefulness, and Crafting Speed. We're going to cover what they do, how they affect both the customer and the crafter. Let's begin. Skill. Skill is the stat you're already familiar with, sort of. In previous expansions, skill was only represented by the bar up top, and you leveled that up by crafting more and more difficult things, which unlocked more and more difficult recipes, which let you level your skill up even more. This expansion, all of that remains true, but there's also a lot more to it as well. For Dragonflight crafting, your crafting skill will influence the quality of the item you create. If you haven't watched the previous episode on item quality, I recommend finishing that one first. Your total skill is determined by your skill bar, up to the maximum shown as it's always been. But then added on will be your racial bonus, up to 5 extra points, your profession equipment, up to 22 extra points. You will also receive a bonus to skill by using higher quality materials in the craft, as we saw in the previous video. Finally, your profession knowledge points will be a large source of your skill. This is the system that allows people to specialize into being the best crafter for certain types of items. How you spend your knowledge points and what build to choose is a much larger topic outside the scope of this video, but as an example, here you can see my blacksmith, who's specialized in weaponsmithing. We started on the axe and hammer path, and later we teched down to the dagger and sword path. We've also got the maximum skill and maximum inspiration talents. This blacksmith has about 300 knowledge points invested, and would be considered a best-in-slot weapon crafter. But when it comes to armor, my skill would not be high enough to make maximum level items. But some of these recipes have massive skill requirements, starting at 300, adding additional difficulty to increase the item level and set the stats the way that you want, even with maximum knowledge and the best possible tools. So, how do we even make those high-level items? Inspiration. The answer to that question is the new crafting stat, Inspiration. You can think of inspiration like a crafter's chance to critically hit. Each craft has a chance to proc Inspiration. You can see here, I would have 40.5% chance to be inspired, crafting this recipe with 83 bonus skill. As you can see, I have 267 skill. To reach maximum quality, I need 300 skill. That's where inspiration comes in. Inspiration comes from a number of different sources. You get some from your profession equipment. You get some from optional reagents that you can add to the order. And a large amount comes from your profession talents. There's also a personable consumable called Sagacious Incense, which can increase the inspiration for nearby crafters when you use one. You may have heard of a term called the inspiration meta. This is what that means. With the additional skill, the crafter may reach a higher breakpoint and produce an item of higher quality, often maxing out the item. For many of the best in slot item level 418 pieces, this is the only way to achieve max quality. Because it works this way, you will see crafters advertising their wares as rank 4 with a certain percent chance for rank 5. The higher the chance, the better the crafter, the more commission they're worth paying. A much more complicated topic is whether to focus on skill or inspiration with your crafter's knowledge. At some point, you just want to max both. However, depend on what you're making, what other bonuses you have, you may find that there are specific breakpoints where your inspiration will let you max something out. You can even sometimes skip right from rank 3 to rank 5 if your inspiration gives you enough skill to reach that level. By mousing over the tab, you can see how much skill would be required to reach the next quality, and at the top where it says Recipe Difficulty, that is the skill required to reach the maximum quality. Now remember, each item can also be infused with power to increase the item level, but this also increases the difficulty of the recipe, so keep that in mind when considering your breakpoints. This is not just limited to equipment, inspiration also works with many of the commodities, and there's a lot of gold to be made for those who figure out these breakpoints and use that to their advantage. Speaking of commodities, they don't just benefit from inspiration, there's another stat I'd like to take a look at. Multicraft. Multicraft is a stat you'll be familiar with if you have played an alchemist in the past. You might have specialized in potions, flasks, or transmutations. Those who did had a chance to make extra items of those types when crafting. Well, that's exactly how Multicraft works today. Except now, it's available to all professions. Multicraft will only work on smaller items, consumables, reagents, that type of thing. You can't multicraft equipment or bigger stuff. If you're not sure if Multicraft applies to a recipe, you can look at the crafting details panel, and if it does apply, you will actually see the Multicraft stat shown, whereas if it does not apply, then the Multicraft will not appear. When filling a crafting order, Multicraft goes to the customer, not the crafter. Thus, if you advertise crafting services for consumable items, having a high Multicraft can help you attract customers. However, Multicraft can still benefit you outside of crafting orders. It's important to note that Multicraft has exponential value. For example, 1% Multicraft does not just produce 1% more items. That would mean that it's a chance for a double craft, but it's stronger than that. I've seen as much as 5 times as many items being produced when it procs. This can be insane value, especially when creating reagents like alloys, bolts, or hides. With good Multicraft, you can dramatically cut down the cost of crafting the final item using these bonus materials. For a reagent-specialized crafter, a tool with Multicraft is going to be your best friend. Speaking of cutting down the cost of materials, that leads us to our next crafting stat, Resourcefulness. Resourcefulness is a chance to use less materials when crafting an item. Like other stats, you can get resourcefulness from your crafting gear, from your profession talents, and from some of the consumables you can add to an item. Similar to inspiration, not only can you increase the chance of your resourcefulness, but you can increase the weight of the proc as well, increasing the amount of stuff that you can save when it happens. The amount saved is some percentage of the base materials. For example, a craft that uses 20 ore might proc 5 ore back, but a craft that uses 200 leather might proc 50 leather back. In the case of this bag here, which only uses 3, it saves 1. Resourcefulness can't save every material though, only normal materials that you could otherwise purchase. The BOP materials like Primal Chaos, the Sparks of Ingenuity, or any of the infusions you might add cannot be saved by resourcefulness. I think this makes sense, but I just wanted to make sure that's crystal clear before you get your hopes up. When working through a crafting order, the additional resources saved are placed into the crafter's inventory, not the customer. The customer doesn't even know that resourcefulness happened. The craft will complete as normal, and you'll have a happy customer. This means that customers don't really care one way or another how much resourcefulness you have, since it doesn't benefit them. It won't help you attract customers the same way high inspiration or Multicraft will. However, there are some recipes that don't benefit from any of the other crafting stats. They don't have a quality, so skill and inspiration don't apply, and they may also be too large an item for Multicraft to apply. A great example of this is bags. They really only benefit from crafting speed and resourcefulness. It's important to know that resourcefulness applies to pretty much every recipe in the game, and in cases where it doesn't, it's usually a bug. However, resourcefulness is not the only way to increase how cost-effective you are. For that, we can turn to our next crafting stat. Crafting speed. Believe it or not, this one is entirely straightforward. Crafting speed increases your crafting speed. You can get it from gear, knowledge, as well as some consumables, like the aerated file of quick hands. While at first glance that may not seem as exciting as the other stats, it actually can be very powerful. The main benefit for this is mass crafting. Stuff like pumping out 1,000,000 potions, weaving bolts of cloth, prospecting for gems, milling for ink, and so on. With this type of crafting, your profit potential is often limited by quantity more than quality. So if you can increase your output in the same amount of time, then, even though you'll consume more materials and make more items, you could increase your gold per hour simply by increasing the number of crafts you do within that single hour. Like we said at the start of the video,
Time is money, friend.
hidden inspiration. Surprise! There's an extra topic that wasn't in the list. For lack of a better term, there's a hidden feature in the system that I call hidden inspiration. It's not shown in the UI when you're looking at the crafting details of your recipe, but there was a blue post explaining how this works. All crafting has a small chance to grant an additional 5% skill, like a base critical chance. This may sound familiar, and that's because it is. It works the same way that inspiration does, it's just a hidden, separate chance, and the bonuses stack. This can help you reach certain breakpoints in skill, which would allow a level of quality you might not otherwise be able to hit. That, in turn, could lead to a more cost-effective crafting procedure. There could be benefits to both big item crafts and mass crafting smaller items. If you use this to your advantage, you can squeeze out some extra profits or save some money using lower quality materials without losing quality on the final product. Now on screen here, I actually have a great example of how we're going to use hidden inspiration. This person is looking for an item level 405 ring-bound hourglass, and they've kindly included maximum rank materials. They gave me the best stuff. This gives us as much skill as we could possibly get, but it's not quite enough to hit 405. However, we have our 34% inspiration chance, and we're going to increase that for them by adding a vibrant polishing cloth. Now we're up to 39. We want even more inspiration, so we're going to use a sagacious incense. It doesn't update on the tooltip, so I'll just re-click. Now you can see we've got 41% inspiration. That's pretty good. But what happens if this 41% doesn't happen? Well, we know we've also got our hidden chance for 5% extra skill. If I add 5% of 351, I will be above 360, right? So, I don't know what the result of this craft will be. We're going to do it live for the video right now. Let's see what we get. We hit the inspiration, so the regular inspiration helped us make a maximum quality craft. We just made a cool 10,000 gold. Enjoy! Come back for the 418 upgrade. Which crafting stat is most important? Well, that's the best part. It depends what you're making, what materials you're using, what optional add-ons you're including, what your profession knowledge is set up as, what race you are. There are so many factors. Each profession has little ways to benefit from each crafting stat, and there's a lot of nuance to the system that we haven't covered here. But if I were to sum up a general guide, equipment-focused crafters tend to value skill and inspiration a bit more. Cheap commodities crafters tend to value multicraft and crafting speed a little bit more. Expensive commodities crafters tend to value inspiration and multicraft a bit more. And novelties crafters, toys, bags, that sort of thing, they usually only value resourcefulness. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list. There's a lot of different ways to do things, and it will continue to evolve as the game continues to update. Currently, crafting stats only affect Dragonflight crafting recipes, but hopefully we continue to use them in future expansions, because for me at least, they've added a lot of depth and gameplay to the profession system. I think it's a lot more interesting and fun this way. That's the basics of what you really need to know about the crafting stats in Dragonflight. I hope this helps you out. On the next video of Dragonflight Crafting for Dummies, we'll be discussing placing orders in the crafting system and the pros and cons of each type. I'd also love to hear from you about what topics you want to see covered by videos in the future. Let me know in the comments. If you found this information helpful, I'd appreciate tapping those like and subscribe buttons. They really do help. Again, my name's Darkscream. Thanks so much for watching. Peace!